story of Fernald Linscott is quite different from what we've been listening to today, and you can chronicle it in your program as well. His daughter has agreed to come in and speak for him today and accept his honors. So it's a pleasure for all of us to welcome her here. Lynn Haynes.
Good afternoon. Man, as I stand here, all I can say is wow. And I'm wearing my Lee Academy blue. Awesome. Again, my name is Lynn. I'm the proud daughter of Fernald Linscott, and obviously will be speaking with you today on his behalf. My brother Tom, who's batted 1,000 with 2 daughters and 5 beautiful grandkids, are here. And the matriarch of our family, our MVP, Pamela Babe, fondly known as Babe. Maybe she was named for Babe Ruth back in the day, I'm not sure. But she certainly is a treasure. First, our family extends congratulations to all of the inductees. You certainly are a very dedicated and talented team. Secondly, we wish to thank Maine Baseball Hall of Fame for accepting Dad into this most prestigious group. And specifically, Don Douglas and Greg Reed. I'm not sure where Greg is right now. He's right over there in the wings. For being so helpful and hospitable throughout this entire process. Attending the Sea Dogs game with family and friends, and now to again be amongst loved ones for this official induction ceremony, it is priceless. Thirdly, and most importantly, to all of Dad's supporters in attendance today, as well as those who would love to have been here but could not be, thank you, thank you, thank you. Over 40 people, from former players, assistant coaches, umpires, and opposing coaches, submitted letters of support or participated in interviews, resulting in over 70 pages of material. Needless to say, the outpouring of edification for Dad has been overwhelming and so heartwarming. For me personally, who has lived in North Carolina for 24 years now, the chance to reunite with so many of Dad's benefactors via phone, email, Facebook messaging, and personal visits, I will treasure them all for a lifetime, as my family will. Excuse my voice, I think so much cheering and excitement all these months, my voice is being challenged, on the verge of laryngitis, I think. Our dad passed away 12 years ago. To anyone who knew him, I think you would agree with his firstborn grandchild, Angie, who is here, when she described her grandpa Fern as a small town man with a larger than life heart and an unmatched love for baseball. The only way his Maine Baseball Hall of Fame induction could be better is if he could be here today. However, if he were, he would be humbled, a bit disconcerted. He would shift the spotlight to somebody else he felt more worthy, and he definitely would credit all of his personal baseball coaches, assistant coaches, the community, and especially his former baseball players that he always referred to as his boys, many of whom are in attendance here today. Like many young boys, Dad's interest in baseball was cultivated at home, playing in the backfield. As he grew older, families gathered on Sundays to play town baseball, with Dad as first baseman and his dad as catcher. When speaking with anyone still alive that played baseball at Lee Academy with Dad, they will tell you he was one heck of a hitter and fielder, helping them advance to what was called the Class M championships at the time. In his adult years, he became a key member of town teams which were widespread in the area during that period. In fact, he was a teammate of Maine Baseball Hall of Fame member Maynard Maxwell. Perhaps even more importantly, he spent 39 years of his life coaching area baseball teams from Farm League through Little League, Senior Little League, and Babe Ruth. Whether it was organizing Little League and building one field in Springfield in 1959, and then another a few years later to accommodate the expanding interest, or organizing Pee Wee basketball in 1964, he had a commendable talent for bringing townspeople together. especially if the project involved kids. We saw fathers and interested teens serving as coaches and mentors to young boys in their very formative years. And coincidentally, a few of the aforementioned mentors served as assistant coaches during Dad's coaching years at Lee Academy, 1978 to 85. During his 8 years as the head coach at Lee Academy, fondly known as LA, his teams amassed impressive records and qualified as Eastern Maine runners-up. Additionally, he spearheaded and helped perform 3 different restorations to the baseball field at the Academy in 1976, 1981, and in the mid-1990s. My dad was a postmaster, and on the side, he always had a bulldozer and heavy equipment, and eventually Tom went into business with him, doing a lot of excavation work. When my dad was interviewed by a local newspaper columnist in 1987, he was asked how he felt about LA's baseball field being named Linscott Field in his honor. He commended local businesses, Kendall McDonald, his dad Sandy, and brother Tom, who was a big part, particularly of the last renovation in the 1990s, as well as the workers for their donations of materials, equipment, supplies, and time. And I'm sure Steve Hanscom that's here that played for Dad, I'm sure you, as other players did in those renovations, you were behind a rake, a spade, doing what you could to certainly level that field and make it playing ready. Again, with this interview, always being Mr. Humble, my dad would make no mention of his own donated heavy equipment and time. And mind you, with that last renovation in the 1990s, there was a local columnist interviewing Dad. There was over 2,000 yards of fill that was donated, along with all this heavy equipment and time. But again, Dad would make no mention of his own contributions to this. All that mattered to him was fulfilling the dream of safer and more up-to-date playing conditions for area youth. To honor him at Lee Academy, the Fernald K. Linscott Scholarship Fund was initiated by various friends of Dad who came up with the idea of the award, and I quote, "Both as a memorial to him and to the high standards of sportsmanship he has set for himself and for his players. It was established in 1983, again I quote, by many of the young people of the area who had been coached by Mr. Linscott, both in area teams and academy teams. On October 1st, 2011, he was inducted into the Lee Academy Hall of Fame, being distinguished as Lee Academy baseball coach, and I quote, leading the team to many playoff berths and devoting countless hours organizing the effort to expand and improve the baseball field, which was subsequently dedicated in his honor as Linscott Field in 1987. Admirably, during his coaching days at Lee Academy, he always turned his coaching stipend back to the baseball program. Don't know how Mom always felt about that, but looking back as Fernald's daughter, and I know my brother Tom would agree, as children, our home with a huge backfield that provided ample space for many a baseball game could not have been more strategically placed. It was 1 mile north of the post office where Dad worked. Another half-mile west of the post office was Fortune Gymnasium, where Pee Wee basketball, which Dad organized and coached for many years, was held. Equidistant south of our home was the Little League field. Within the Sublime playground, Dad was part of it all. Because of his obvious love for kids and being an advocate for the underdog, our residence was a magnet for any kid who could walk, bike, beg a ride from a relative or a friend, or hitchhike to get there. I would love to have a nickel for every pop-flying grounder he hit to us. I would be retired and living on a tropical island. And Mom, you'd be with me, because how much did he donate of all these excavation jobs he did for nothing? He did not care what your name was, your skill level, economic background, status in the community, or your past mistakes. Any child was given the gift of his time, full attention, listening ear, and compassionate heart. With a story, joke, or his trademark, wiggling of his ears. Okay, now think about that. Can you wiggle your ears? I can do it, but I've kept it a secret from the family. He could win over the shyest of the shy. In essence, he welcomed everyone, and kids knew it. And I must say, at this point, they said that we could simply take as much time as we wanted. I say that, I know we're supposed to hold to 5 minutes, but I joked with some of the inductees out back. You have to be Mr. Humble and hold back the ego a little bit. I'm speaking for my dad, and I could speak all day. So those of you that didn't use the 5 minutes, please allow me to tell some stories, because there's a lot of his former players here in the audience. So as a testament to his way of people, I wish to share a few of the stories from his boys, his former baseball players. I'm going to start with a couple that, when you look at your congratulatory ads that are in the induction program, 2 of them played on that 1959 team. One was Doug Scott, that lives in Utah, Nevada, that area now, and would love to have been here today but couldn't. He says, Fernald was a very influential part of my youth. He devoted his life to the youth of Springfield, and for that I'm grateful, as I was part of the original Springfield Tigers baseball team, who with Fernald's competitive drive and dedication took 13 boys from a small, unheard of town and made them tri-county champions. He instilled a sense of competition in my life that lives there today. Jerry Downs, another one who played on that 1959 team and couldn't be here today. One of the greatest and most highly respected men that ever passed through the town of Springfield will be surely missed. He touched the lives of so many children, including me, and taught us so many morals of life through the eyes of sports and sportsmanship. I believe it was 52 years ago that I had the pleasure of being on his first baseball team in Springfield. The countless hours he spent with us trying to make good ball players out of the average kid. In Little League, Babe Ruth, and Pony League, our group won over 200 ball games in those years and only lost about 25. This is a tribute to a great man and one of the greatest coaches the state has ever had. We were just the average ball players, so it was the coach that he emphasized. Next is Todd Thurlow, who is here today. Played at Lee Academy for Dad, I believe, 1980 to 84. And I quote, Lynn, your dad was a special coach and a special man. There were so many wonderful memories. The bus trips where we could sing all of Alabama's latest hits to working on the field. He orchestrated a major overhaul on the field, and to the nicknames that he gave to each of us, to his polished black truck and his vintage crew cut. Sterling Linscott, who's here today, played at LA, I believe 1981 to 84. And I quote, I played 3 sports in high school. We struggled at times to fill all soccer and basketball uniforms. However, in the spring, we never had enough baseball uniforms. Many players who knew they would not receive much varsity time still wanted to be part of the baseball team and play for Fern, as he was fondly known. Many of them never played another sport. Fern never cut one of them. I remember having a few players with uniforms that didn't even quite match. I wouldn't be surprised if Fern bought those extra uniforms himself to keep every player he could. I would often see him giving these kids a ride home after games and practices. We have Dave Womble, known as Whammy, played at LA, I believe, 1980 to 83. Back in the 80s, our baseball scoreboard was the type that required a manager to walk out at the end of each inning and physically place numbered tiles on it so everyone could see the score. I remember pitching in a game against Howland. The whole game had been a bit tense. Partway through the game, a Howland player threw a rock at our old scoreboard, causing all the numbers to fall off. At the end of the game, I had the pleasure of pitching to that guy who threw the rock, and I struck him out. Mike Ripley, who is here, formerly known as Ripper, played LA 1980-83. I never in 4 years heard any player badmouth Fern. Even the umpires that upped his games were very impressed with the class act that Lee Academy had and the coach that made it happen. Fern took a group of boys and turned them into gentlemen on and off the field. Dean Ripley, Mike's brother, who is here today, I think he went by the same nickname, Rip or Ripper. played 1982 to 85. I had the privilege to play under Fern for 3 years, and in that time he taught us that sportsmanship and being part of a team truly was. And by that I mean, even when a loss occurred and we gave it our all, he would remind us to hold our heads high and move forward, learn from mistakes and try not to repeat them. Although winning was great, he also reminded the team not to get cocky or arrogant, to stay focused on the next game. But what stays with me the most was his ability to connect with everyone in a different way. He always seemed to know what to say and at the right time, and that in itself is quite a talent. Fernald instilled confidence in all who played for him, and what better gift could one ask for? Travis Roy played 1984-87. I have to share my favorite story. I guess I was a freshman, made the baseball team. I wasn't an all-star by any stretch of the imagination, but I was on the team and that was good enough for me. During a home game, I got the nod from Coach Linscott to go in as a pinch hitter. I got up to bat the first time in a high school game, and I was scared to death. I think it was the second or third pitch, I could hear him saying in my head, "Eye on the ball, level swing." And when you know, I hit a home run past the scoreboard. I touched home plate, coach met me and said, "I didn't know you could do that." To which he responded, "Me neither." You have to know Travis Roy. He ended the exchange with "Good job, son," and a pat on the back. I never hit another home run in high school baseball and was cut from the team after my sophomore year under a new coach. Thanks, Fern, for taking the time to teach many a player how to play baseball and how to grow into a young man that you could be proud to be. We are all better for it. Unlike the one home run that I hit in high school baseball, you hit many over the years with everything that you coached us. Every young man you put your arm on the shoulder of and offered direction to, and so many other ways. BJ Delno, who is here, played at LA 76 to 80. In an interview with Greg Reed, shared a rather tender story, okay? Remember tender. BJ, you know what I'm gonna share. One instance occurred during a pregame batting practice where BJ was playing for the academy. BJ was a right-handed pull hitter. Fernald, as was his custom, happened to be chatting with the opposing coach in foul territory down the third baseline. Then it happened. BJ caught an inside pitch on the barrel, sent a screamer down the line. As luck would have it, the ball struck his coach in an extremely delicate and tender location. Down he went. He was not down long, however. He bounced up, proceeded to resume his conversation. Those who have had a similar experience can attest how difficult that was. Fernald was not about to allow anything to detract from the game at hand, which surprised nobody who knew him. BJ commented on how Fernald emoted a quiet seriousness that kept the dugout on task. However, the incident was a regular topic of discussion during BJ's later visits with him, and it resulted in many shared laughs. Because Dave Gaw is a former Maine Baseball Hall of Fame inductee, I have to share two different stories here. Galen or Junior Thompson played 78 to 82. When interviewed by Greg Reed, it seems one of her strongest rivals was Hall of Fame coach Dave Gaw. Having coached against both, I can tell you that to say that their on-field demeanors were different would be a monumental understatement. It seems that during a semifinal playoff game, the Panthers had a runner in scoring position with 2 out and the bases loaded. The hitter struck a flare that was fielded on the bounce and resulted in a missed tag. The Panthers erupted into a celebration which was interrupted by the apoplectic Coach Gaw. He vociferously explained to the umpires that the situation had been a forced play and that a tag was not needed. The ball had in fact beaten the runner to the plate. To say pandemonium resulted would be completely accurate. After a conference, the umpires agreed with Gaw, and that was that. Junior described Fernald's restraint and his demand for decorum from his players. One has to wonder how many other coaches would have provided that example. In relation to that same story, Barry Webster, who was with Dad for many, many years in many, many capacities, wanted to be here today but had property in Florida that was severely damaged from the hurricane. In an interview with Greg Reed, he shared a story about the aforementioned story about Dave Gaw. Barry's tenure as assistant coach spanned 5 or 6 years. In fact, he was there for the so-called tag play described by Junior Thompson. It is interesting to hear the story from a coach's perspective. Barry admits he was more than a bit upset when the final decision was revealed. I doubt, however, that anyone who knew Fernald Linscott would be surprised when they learned that he admonished his assistant coach thusly, saying, "Okay, it was a terrible call. It probably will cost us a game. The umpire made the call and we can't change it. All we can do is go out there and do the best we can. That's the way it goes. Now you go coach first base." One last story that I would like to share to Bill Wombold, who is here, brother to Dave, and also was known as Whammy. Together I call him the double whammy. Bill played at LA in the 1980s, and I'll never forget the appreciation award that Bill delivered to Dad's home in the summer of 2009 on behalf of all of Dad's former Lee Academy baseball teams. It's one that many coaches could only hope to receive. Dad was very sick at the time and passed away 5 months later. The engraving on that plaque reads, "You taught us survival skills we will always remember. You trained us to be willing to take risks, to rest easy in the quiet times, and to fully feel the thrill of an earned victory. Thank you for your belief in us, for you two are a winner and a great friend." At the bottom of the plaque it read, "Your Lee Academy baseball teams." To you, Bill, and all other members of Dad's LA teams, you will never know what your presentation of that plaque did for Dad and our family. As any retired person will tell you, the hardest part of your golden years is finding your own new identity. And I'm sure a lot of the inductees right here that have said the challenge you had when you gave up the love of baseball in a professional capacity. I'm sure it's hard to continue to find your identity, not feel that you're forgotten, and know that your life mattered. You all validated for Dad that day, and we eternally are grateful to all of you. Alrighty, I am going to summarize. Thanks for your patience, but this is one proud moment. I would stress the following. Dad's prideful roots spread deep in Springfield, Maine. He was born there, thrived there, and he died there. Matter of fact, at our family's home that was built in the 1850s, and Dad lived there all his life, he's buried in the cold cemetery that was land donated by my family back in the 1850s. And when I'm there mowing the lawn or doing chores for my mom to this day, big front lawn, doing that, I can see Dad over there in his resting place. And for you LA players, as I'm mowing that lawn, it's almost like he's giving me that piercing gaze. You've all seen it. Hat down, eyes, fingers, focus lens. Anyway, it's just a blessing to have him there. He served his country, went on to devote over 40 years to some form of coaching and community service. For him, coaching was not about accolades and awards for him. Rather, he wished for any publicity to be given to his players. He accumulated a lifetime of memories interspersed with the respect and admiration of a community who appreciated everything he did for kids. Perhaps Kendra Ritchie, and as you look at that congratulatory ad in the induction program in 1959, she was the only female there. Gold. She said it best. I don't think he knew how important he was over the years to the lives of a number of poor kids from interior rural Maine, as well as the decades of high school players he coached and years of tough, hard-nosed, skilled town teams on which he played. But we knew.
I'm giving a standing ovation, just so you know. Maybe you can hold this when I do it.
The last act for me, I know I'm going to be accepting a bat here in a plaque in a moment, and I just ask your patience here as I speak to my mom, and I'd like her to come forward because she's the MVP. Look at her. I would like to say Dad's greatest testament of loyalty was his marriage to Mom. At the time of his death in 2010, they had been married 55 years. She had her own career, yet provided a loving household and childhoods from young Tom that were ripe with positive influences. In her words, she describes herself as perhaps one of the first sports widows, when that term probably wasn't even used back in the day. She supported and tolerated Dad's ventures when many women would not have, and I share her quote. Fernald's activities made for busy times, but due to our family's love of sports, it was not as hard as it could have been. He was lucky to have done what he loved. Many times it included his own 2 children. He was fortunate to have had great help and the support of good friends in the community. Thanks again to everyone for your overwhelming love and support. Dad loved and respected you all, and so do we. Love you, Dad. This is a bad flag.
Ha ha.